So, dive. So it's important for everyone watching to understand that this video, like it says here, like I've had this screen up for like a long time now, if you were watching stream. So this video is only just gonna outline what the very basic sort of fundamentals of a dive is. So this is not gonna I'm not gonna go into detail, I'm not gonna be like breaking down scenarios, I'm not gonna be breaking down if you do this, the enemy's gonna do this, you have to do this to stop them doing this. Like, that's complicated. I just want to get into the basics. I just want to get those basics down, and then I want to build this up. So for those who don't know me, um, well, you're watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, then I'd hope you do. But I'm a console watch coach. So this whole video is sort of like targeted towards the team that I'm currently coaching slash playing on. But yeah, I was offered open division spots as a coach, so I'm at that sort of like high-end open division level of coaching. But this is literally just gonna be me just talking about the basics of a dive. Like, someone who's in gold SR, plat SR could probably do this because it's literally just bonking people on the head. Like, hey, you have to set up a dive, and hey, you have to go on the same target when you dive. It's stupidly basic. But you'd be surprised. Like, I've seen a lot of teams. I've been in console Overwatch for a very long time now, and I've seen teams play from like 2.5k teams, and I've seen all the way up to 4.5k teams, and people still can't do this. Like, they can't do a basic dive, and that's what we're hopefully gonna solve today. So, and like I say here, to gain a higher understanding of a comp, you must know the basics through and through. And if you don't know the basics, then I can't sit here and be like giving all this complicated like micro breakdown if you don't know the actual basics of a dive. So hopefully we're gonna get the basics down today. That is the goal. So you have to you have to ignore the handwriting. It's not like this all the way through. I have a lot more sticky notes, but it's a little bit questionable, as you can see. But yeah. So anyway, like I said, we're going to be looking at what is a dive today. That is the goal. We're going to try to understand what a dive is. And I've sort of broken this down into four things. So we've got resources. We're going to be looking at what resources we need to be using for dive, what resources are used for dive, how we should be using those resources at a very basic like understanding. And then we're going to be looking at staging dives, which is setting up dives, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that's like the stage before you actually need to, before you go for the big boom, bam, 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 the big boom dive, right? So you have to set it up. Like, we have to set up and get all our resources in place, ready to dive. But we're gonna touch on all of this in a bit more detail in a bit. And then we're gonna look at potential comms you could be using whilst like doing like your dive. And then we're gonna look at the concept of kill boxes and all of this. These three. Sorry if you see me sniffing a lot. I have a cold right now. These three here, the resources, staging, dives, comms, this all leads into the concept of kill boxes. So that's a very, well, it's not a very difficult concept, but it's a bit more of a complicated one, and we're going to get onto that at the end, and then I might do a whole video on kill boxes at some point, because it's a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to go into today. But like I said, we're doing the basics. I think, what was the point I just touched out on? We're going to be looking at dives, so like a first hit dive today. So, and like I said earlier, this is just pretty basic, just looking at like what resources we need to use, etc. Like all of this stuff I got down here. But it's going to be looking at a dive. So say, oops, what am I doing? It's going to be looking at a dive, a first hit dive, which means you're entering the fight. The fight starting. It's the first engagement. That's what I'm trying to say with what this first hit dive is. And it's going to be disregarding, like I said earlier, disregarding what the enemy is like possibly going to do to stop your dive. So we're literally just going to be looking and focusing on what we need to do. And then maybe another time I'm going to get into like sort of break down the micro and the macro a little bit more. But today we're just going to literally be looking at what we need to do on this dive. So completely disregarding enemy. So, if you want to be that guy that's going to make a comment, but oh, you can't do this all the time because this happens. It's like, yeah, we know. We're just looking at the very, very basics today. Because obviously, like, in an ideal world, you're going to be able to do all of this. But the ideal world in Overwatch does not exist. So you're not going to be given a perfect setup every single time you go for a first hit dive, right? So, just keep that in mind. Like this is literally looking at as if we're gonna get a perfect and ideal setup, or like a perfect ideal environment for this. So just focusing on our dive, not what the enemy's gonna do to stop us. So this is here with my very messy handwriting. This is the comp we're like specifically looking at today. So we're looking at our sort of just basic, very standard dive comp. So we're looking at obviously your main tanks, your Bull Winston, your Diva off tank, Sombra Tracer DPS setup, then a Brick, and then Ana Zen. Obviously Ana with the Winston and Zen with the Bull. I included both Bull and Winston today because the actual like theory behind it is extremely similar, and we'll touch onto that in a little bit. That's the comp we're going to be pretty much focusing on today, like just very standards. You know, I'm sure people are going to be like, yeah, well you can play Aggro Tracer or whatever, like, but we're just going to look at Sombra Tracer today because I feel like that's the most standard variation of dive right now, and that's the variation of dive my team plays. Like I said, this is quite catered towards my team that I'm supposed to be helping. And then these are two very important sort of definitions we've got here. So we've got a soft dive, a minimal resource dive for better positioning and setup. So basically a soft dive is, say you're using Monkey Jump, you're using Diva's boosters to take a high ground position so that your team, so that your backline can be on the high ground, for example. Like a soft dive it's pretty much like just taking better positioning. Like it says there, minimal resource dive for better positioning. You don't want to be like, you know, a soft dive, you're not really going on a target, you're just going into a position. You're just trying to secure a space. And then a hard dive is what we're focusing on today. We're focusing on hard dives. Hard dive, I've just quickly like jotted down here. Hard dive is a maximal resource engagement onto a target. So we're going to touch on the resources next. That is the next little bit. What a hard dive is a hard dive is what you're looking at when you're going onto a target, when you're engaging a target. And the very key thing here is maximal resource. So this is a hard dive is you want to be using all the possible resources we have in that dive so it can succeed. Because if you're using all the possible resources available to you when you're diving, you know, you're going to have a lot easier of a time as well if you're using half your resources, right? So I think that's pretty basic. I think everyone should understand that, hopefully. And yeah, I think we can move on to what our resources actually are. I don't have a mouse, which is why like random things keep popping up on the screen, so sorry about that. And I need to blow my nose again. Very scuffed, very scuffed. College experience coaching. Okay, so here I've outlined all the possible resources you have in this comp that can help you with your dive. So the little space in between, that's like for where the ult is. So we'll start with Winston, then we'll go to Bull. You'll see, I think you'll see a lot through this. I sort of forget that I was doing Bull as well, so he sort of just like starts on the end of stuff. But yeah, so let's start. We'll start with our main tank. So with Winston, obviously you have your jump, you have your bubble. Your jump it's pretty straightforward. You need to jump. You need to use your jump to jump onto a target. Like that's how Winston does his like extra bonus damage of jump. That's how Winston initiates a dive. And then you have your bubble. Bubble can be used to deny healing. Okay, if you bubble a target, then you're going to deny the healing to them. You're going to deny healing LOS to that dive target, and it also can be used to protect yourself and your teammates while you're in the while you're trying to, you know, perform a hard dive. And then obviously Winston's primal, that's pretty straightforward. So you can dive in, you don't have to worry about getting healing because you can just pop that primal, and then using that primal, like I said, I'm not going to break down like micro today or macro, anything like that, but using your primal, you can use it to live, you can use it to stay in the dive a little bit longer, then use primal to separate people from dive, get picks. Separate people from dive? No, separate people from each other, separate the enemy team, so separate the Brig from the Ana, just an example. And then you can also use primal to get picks, of course, etc, etc. With Sombra, you have hack, and that's a key, like a really key ability in this comp that's going to be helping set up our hard dives. Especially when, you know, you're looking at the enemy has this ultimate, we need to dive this target to get rid of, or to negate this win condition, etc. But that's a bit more like advanced sort of theory. That's target priority, which I'm gonna make a video on, I think, because target priority is quite fun to break down. And obviously you have EMP, which is a huge win condition. EMP, you obviously EMP your target, then you dive on the target, etc. This is all really stupidly, ridiculously straightforward, so, sorry if this is boring. Um, D.Va, obviously you got your boosters, same as Winston Jump, that's how you actually get to your target. You have missiles, that's, just your extra damage, essentially. Then you have Matrix, and obviously Matrix is a very, very, very strong ability, and that needs to be, well, no, I'm trying to say there's different ways you can break down using Matrix, and there's different things you can go for, but I think the most basic one is your Winston jumps in, your D.Va comes in, D.Va matrixes the Winston so he doesn't eat a flashbang from a McCree as he dives in, etc. Or asleep. Pretty straightforward. Or another use of Matrix in this dive comp, which I'll break down another time, is matrixing your Sombra so your Sombra can successfully hack a target without being interrupted. That's a bit more of an advanced use of DM or defense matrix. You'll notice I haven't included D.Va Bomb, because when you're playing dive, especially if you're playing Brig Ana, your only real defensive ultimate is your D.Va Bomb. So I haven't actually included it in sort of resources for dive, because in my opinion you should be using D.Va Bomb defensively as a defensive ultimate or just a remake. But I mean, there's nothing against chucking a D.Va Bomb into where you want to dive. I'm sure that's a viable strategy to most people. But by doing that, by sort of throwing your D.Va Bomb in for an engaged, like for a hard dive, you're not going to have your defense matrix for that hard dive, are you? So I don't agree with it personally. I think D.Va Bomb should be used as a defensive ultimate if you can. But yeah, that's just my take on that. And then we're onto Tracer. Obviously Tracer has her blinks, that's how she gets around the map, that's how she's going to get to the target. That's how she's going to be able to hard dive the target with the team. And then Pulse Bomb, that's just like essentially Pulse Bomb is like, essentially another ability Tracer can use while diving. If she hits it, she hits it. If she doesn't, no biggie. We're still gonna stay in. We're still gonna shoot the targets, aren't we? So, Brig has packs. That's pretty much it. Like, because we're talking about a first hit hard dive. You always want your Brig. You never want your Brig being involved in a first hit, basically, or a first dive, a first engagement of a fight, because at that first engagement, say the enemy team's also playing dive, then that's when the enemy team's going to want to be hard diving your backline as well, so your Brig needs to be staying with your Ana. So Brig doesn't really get involved in this hard dive, so we won't be talking about Brig too much. And then I put Rally here, but I put a little asterisk over it because I think the usage of Rally should be used when fight turns to brawl more often, or defensively again. But it's not like a true defensive ult, but to give like your team armor. Say like you're going really, like your dive core is going really hard on a hard dive, which is what we're looking at today. But then you're gonna have minimal defense against an enemy dive, etc. So, and I guess you can use Rally like if everyone like grouped up around the break before you hard dive and everyone got that armor, then went in using Rally. I guess you could do that, but I sort of put it on an asterisk because I think Rally's a great ultimate when your fight turns to brawl, which is all these concepts like I need to make videos about, but when fight turns to brawl, so sort of like when the fight breaks down, it's just like a slaughter on the payload. What am I trying to say? It's like a slaughter on the payload, sort of like, you're just looking to pick off people. You're looking to clean up a fight. Is what I'm trying to get at. So, Rally's an asterisk. Then Ana, I've included burst healing. So you notice I haven't included primary fire for any of these heroes except Ana. Ana has not very high, but Ana has burst healing, which is super important to our dive, because we can't sustain a dive unless we have this burst healing. We can't, because what happens with dive is you use all your resources at once. You go like that. You go bam. All the resources gone at once. If our Ana can't sustain specifically our tanks during that time where we don't have our resources up, then we're in trouble. We're gonna just die and we won't be able to actually get any kills. So very important. And we're going to touch onto Ana LOS and backline LOS in a little bit later, because that's another super important thing. Then Ana has nade. Obviously, you can throw nade in. Nade's actually a huge win condition in itself. If you throw a nade every time your team's set up for a first hit hard dive, if you throw a nade every single time and you hit them, sometimes you don't hit them, but if you hit that nade, that's a huge win condition to your dive. Like that can completely make the dive successful. It's sort of like a do and die almost. But people like to save their nades for defensive uses, which is also a very good thing to do. And then obviously you have Nano as Ana's ultimate ability. That's a win condition in itself. That's a really good tool for a first engagement, like a first hit dive, because you're going to be taking that nano, probably putting it on your Winston. You have that extra damage Winston going into the target, gonna help you kill the target quick, nice and simple. We have Bull. I actually forgot to do with Winston, but oh well. Ball is a simple one. You have your grapple, you have your power drive. Technically, you have your adaptive shields as well, which helps you sustain, and then you have mines. Mines is similar to primal, where you just sort of put mines on your target, etc. You know, you just put mines down, put them on your target, then hopefully your target walks into them, or you zone the target out so the target becomes easier to kill. And then you have Zen, which is the last one. You have his 2 orbs. Discord orb, which obviously it's going to amplify the damage put onto your target if you get the Discord orb in the right place. And then you have your healing orb, which is obviously going to be put onto a target. You want to be putting your healing orb, if you're playing, because you play the Zen, you play the ball with the Zen, most of the time, that healing orb wants to be going either on your ball or on your tracer. Because if it's on your tracer, then your tracer can sustain the dive and be involved in the dive for a little bit longer. Whereas, because ball has a bit more survivability. Because tracer without recall, you know, niche so good, right? So, there you go. So if I can just zoom out a little bit. That's all the resources we have available to us in this comp for a hard dive. This is all the resources we have, right? So if you just ignore the ultimates for now, just take this as like a neutral fight meaning no ultimates involved. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and obviously, you know, you don't play all 8 heroes at once, you only play 6, so you're looking at, you know, probably like 10 resources available to you that you should be using when you dive. So just look at the logistics of this right now. So you have 10 resources, well, near enough 10 resources available to you. Imagine if you used all those resources at once onto one 200 HP target. That is what dive is supposed to be. That is what our hard dive is. Maximum resource engagement onto a target. So you're trying to use all these resources available to you, and you're trying to put them all onto one enemy target. And that is what dive is. And it sounds so simple, but the amount of people that can't do this, the amount of people that can't have a hack onto the same target, or sorry, have a Sombra like ready to shoot the enemy target and to hack something, to, you know, maybe just hack the enemy target, keep it simple. And the amount of people that, you know, they don't have a tracer set up ready with the blinks or blinks available. It's all just, all it's like, all the hard dive is about, I'm sort of struggling for words here, is, let me take a bit of water. All the hard dive is about is just going on to one target and using all these available resources to burst down that target. So simple, such an easy concept, and I think everyone understands it. I'm sure there's, you know, I'm sure no one watching this video is looking at me like I'm inventing rocket science or something. Like, this is a very simple concept, but we have to go over these basics to build a higher understanding of compositions, like I said earlier on. So, as you can see, there's staging dives. That is the next topic, but how do we get all these resources? How do we set up these resources to be able to have an effective hard dive, which is what we're going to go on to here. Our next topic, staging dives. So staging dives is just setting up dives pretty much. So we need to set up all these resources I mentioned just previously. All those resources, they need to be set up in a way that they can be used for a hard dive. So if you look back at some of these resources, some of them is Winston jump, right? Some of them is tracer blinks, some of them is diva boosters, because you have to actually get to your target first, don't you? So what do we need to set up? So what I was trying to touch on here is super important. I've just had people come back. My roommates are back. I locked my door though, so don't worry. So what do we need to set up? Our backline LOS. That's super important. I touched on it a little bit earlier when I was talking about Ana. But if you don't have your backline LOS, you can't get access to healing while you're diving. Your backline LOS is what sustains your hard dive. If you don't have that hard dive sustain, how are you going to go in? It's a simple concept. I jump in as Winston, I can't get healed, I die. You know, you have to have backline LOS. But when you're looking at Bull Zen, it's a little bit, well, not more complicated, but it's a little bit different, because Ana, you know, that you need your backline LOS for Ana, because you need that burst healing onto your Winston. For Bull Zen, you need that backline LOS because your Zen needs to be able to see a target to discord a target, and to be able to see a target to put healing orb onto a target. So backline LOS is insanely important. And then next thing, Winston Diva Sombra Tracer positions. That is your dive core, which is just a quicker way for me to say Winston Diva Sombra Tracer. I would just say dive core. You need to set up their positions. So all of these characters here, or all of this dive core here, I should say, they need to be in a position where they can hit this target, where they can be onto this target. Okay, so where they can be into a position to use their resources, because, you know, I don't have a draw. I mean, I could draw it out here. If my enemy target is here, this is the enemy target that we're trying to dive. This guy here. If I'm his Winston, oh, oh no, it's a little glitch. If I'm Winston and I'm all the way over here, oh, I hate not having a mouse. So if I'm Winston, oh my god, stop it. Oh my god. We'll get there, I promise. If I'm Winston and I'm over here, my jump only goes as far as here. How can I be on that target? You know, I'm not going to be able to actually shoot that target. So as Winston, you need to be set up in a position, which we're going to touch on a bit, where you are in jumping distance of your target. And my jump reach is there, if that makes sense. Rub that out. Yeah, you can see what not having a mouse does to me. It's so... I mean, I have a mouse, I just don't have it plugged in because I can't plug it in to my laptop, which is pain. So, and I got a little note here which we're going to touch on a little bit later. By setting up our positioning, we are setting up our kill box. But we're going to touch onto that a little bit later. So, we're going to go for all the heroes now. We're going to look at what we need to set up for each hero. So, like I just touched on now, Winston, you need to be in a jumping distance from your target. So, ideally, like, you know, it's a very basic concept of Winston, where if you cannot use jump to engage a target, don't use jump to engage a target, because you have jump to escape, that is perfect, because you can actually just jump out for free. But regardless, your Winston needs to be in a spot where he can jump onto the target. Simple, so simple. And your D.Va is the same. Your D.Va needs to be in a target, not in a target. Your D.Va needs to be in a spot where she can use her boosters to get to the target. That needs to be set up before the dive happens. This is awkward staging a dive, so I'm going to try to use the word staging a little bit more because that's the technical term for it, if you will. But hey ho. So your tanks and I mean Bull's the same. Bull's it's a bit of an easy one because Bull's grapple is sort of like a lot more, you know, you get a lot more range or a lot more, you can go a lot further with Bull's grapple rather than Winston or D.Va boosters. So Bull just needs to be able to engage the target, same as these. So all your tanks need to be able to get to the target with one use of their cooldown. So you don't want to be like, obviously you don't want to be using one jump to get somewhere and then just be like, okay, I need to sit here in open space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait for your jump to go again, because you're just gonna get shot down. If you sit in open space in Overwatch, you die. You know, pretty simple stuff, right? So your tanks need to be in a position where they can use their cooldowns to get actually onto their targets. So DPS is where it gets a little bit more complicated, but your Sombra needs to be ready to hack hack a desired target, because you don't always want to hack the actual target you're going on. For example, you might want to hack a D.Va because you stop the defense matrix that can go onto the target you're shooting. So that the D.Va doesn't have the defense matrix, there's no way for the enemy team, to stop, say, our Tracer shooting them, for example. But it's really important that our Sombra is also involved in shooting the enemy target for high damage. And then our Tracer, I've got a whole video on Tracer microplanning which touches over this. It's on my YouTube. But your Tracer wants to be 1 blink, at maximum 2 blinks distance for being able to engage the target. So this is really important when you set up as Tracer, because you need to be able to have blinks when you're engaging. Because say you engage a target without blinks, you just sit there with no blinks, use your recall, how are you supposed to escape, right? You're just gonna die. So it's really important that this is all engaging onto the same target as well, which is super important. So your Winston needs to be ready to engage the same target as your D.Va, as your Sombra, as your Tracer. Your dive core here, so this 1, 2, 3, 4, then obviously Bull when you're playing Bull, they all need to be able to go on that same target. Super important. And we're going to get into like sort of breaking that down a little bit more in a bit. But all of this from targets, from same targets, if that makes sense. All 4 of these people need to be arriving onto that same target at the same time. That is what a hard dive is. That is how we use our resources. And I will touch on to how we can set it up in a bit. And then obviously backline. Brig is a simple one. Your Brig just needs to be playing with your Ana Zen, because on that first hit dive, like I talked about earlier, your Brig can't really get involved in that because your Brig needs to be protecting your Ana and your Zen, because something might be after them. So sort of like you're going for your first engagement at the same time enemies going for their first engagement, if you see what I mean. So like the Brig has to protect their Ana. Pretty, that's simple. Everyone should know that. Then your Ana needs to be in a position to have LOS of the dive core whilst they engage the targets, and so does your Zen. So these two are exactly the same. Your Ana and your Zen, just in simple terms, your Ana and your Zen need to be able to see your team diving. They need to be able to see your dive core. And that's pretty much, that's staging a dive. Like all of these things, this is like, think of it as like a little checkbox, right? And we'll talk about sort of like comms and how we can set this up. But staging a dive, just setting it up. Oh, accidentally drew. Just setting it up. All of these things, if they're all set up and ready to go, your dive is going to be way much more successful. And staging dives is what like teams really really struggle to see and really struggle to sort of understand as a concept and apply the concept. Because I'll be watching teams play dive, and teams they'll just dive. They'll just go. They'll be like, okay, can we go on Anna? 3, 2, 1, boom. But what if my trace is not ready to go on Anna? What if my trace is like a good 3, 4 blinks away from that Anna, and my tracer can't get onto the Anna by the time my monkey is ready to go out, right? So it's super super important we really really think about applying this concept of staging dives, and getting everyone ready to dive. Because if everyone's ready to dive, your dive is going to be way more successful than just going, okay, go, and say half the team's not ready to do that. So that's what like the massive focus on is on for this what is a dive video I'm making today, staging dives. Because if you stage a dive, if you get your checklist ticked off, if everyone's ready for the dive, it's going to be way much more successful. So we'll move on. Like I said, this is such like really really basic concepts. So I'm not expecting people to look at this video and like just be like, whoa, eye-opening. But it's just I'm trying to highlight the importance of setting up a dive, of staging a dive, in order to be successful. So we're going to touch on comms now. So there is no defined way of how to comm in Overwatch. There is no, this is the way you have to comm in Overwatch. I thought I had a 4. Yeah, I do have a 4. So there's no best way to comm in Overwatch, because it's going to be different for every team. It's going to be different for everyone, Everyone's going to have a different way of doing this, but I've just got this out because I think this is the most simple way I could think of how you could break this down. So, imagine, let's just say we're attacking, I don't know, watch point, Gibraltar third point, just came to mind because we scrimmed it yesterday, right? So, we just lost the fight, we're going into the next fight, we need to identify the dive target. It's really important everyone knows who we're diving. So let's just say the enemy team is playing Brawl, and they have Ryan Diva, Maycree, Lucio Bab, a standard Brawl composition, right? Let's say I go, okay, can we dive the Baptiste this fight? So then everyone's on that same page that we're diving Baptiste. And then we need to stage the dive, so by doing, like, using comms here, we could be like, okay, can we set up to dive Baptiste? So we've identified Baptiste as the dive target, so your main tank's gone, or whoever is your main shot caller, might not be your main tank, if it's different for every team, like I said. So we've identified, we've gone, okay, can we dive the Baptiste this fight? Everyone's like, yeah. And then we go, okay, so let's stage to dive Baptiste. So get ready to dive Baptiste. So then everyone goes to set up, everyone gets into the position where they're able, our dive call gets into position where they're able to go onto that Baptiste. And then you have the ready call. And if everyone's not ready, you don't go. You simply wait, okay? So, like, I'll be sitting there, say I'm playing Winston. I'll be sitting there, I'm in my position, I'm like, are we ready to dive Baptiste? Are we ready to go? Can we hit? Are we ready to hit? Are we ready to go? However you say it. If I hear yeah from everyone, say yeah, we can go. If I hear that from 3 people, then I'm gone, And then you can count down the dive. This should be count down the dive, but cool the dive. So everyone's ready to go. Everyone is in their position. They're all set up, ready to dive this target. Then you call the dive. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's dive. Or 3, 2, 1, go. So you give it a 3, 2, 1, then everyone goes in at the same time onto that target. Okay? That is extremely basic. Like, that is the most simple way of just looking at dive in general. Like, this is looking at a hard dive. Identify target, set up. Okay, are we set up? Are we ready to go? Cool the dive. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Bam. That is all it takes. But all of these processes, all of this staging the dive, you can't spend 40 seconds staging a dive. Which is what I sort of spoke about at the start. Like, we're looking at this as if we're in a perfect and an ideal situation, where you could just be like, oh, okay, I can stage this dive for free. You're not always going to be able to stage this dive. That's why we have soft dives, but that's not for today. I'm just looking at pure, absolute basics. Staging the dive. So everyone's staged, everyone's ready to go. Ready, 3, 2, 1, go. Simple, right? Shouldn't really be hard for anyone to understand that. And that's all it takes with comms. Like, that's just how you can set it up. And like I was saying, I sort of like I think I went off on a bit of a tangent, but the staging the dive process, it will become a lot quicker the more you sort of get used to actually properly setting up. Like if you're just seeing this video for the first time, you're like, oh crap, like I need to start staging dives with my team. That might take you a good 30 seconds for everyone to be in a good position. But by the time you're getting it down, you just be ready to go. Be like, okay, can we set up for Baptiste? Everyone understands where they need to be set up to go onto that Baptiste in that certain position. So that would take a lot quicker. But staging the dive, very important. No matter how much time it takes, if you set up a dive and you stage it properly, it's going to be way more successful than just a random dive not set up. So I do think it is worth sort of spending that time to stage the dive. Anyway, that's just a little comm structure you can use. That's pretty basic stuff. I mean, all of this stuff is so basic. Like everyone should understand this, but I just want this to be a little bit of like an eye-opening session. Sort of like, oh, I need to do this. Like this is basics. I don't have this down right now. I need to do this. But anyway, so we've talked about resources, we talked about staging dives, we talked about comms and like our comm structure for diving. All of those three things, like I said earlier in the video, all of these three things lead to the concept of a kill box. So this is touching into like the most advanced concept of this video, the concept of a kill box. So what is a kill box? I've sort of tried to break this down into a super easy definition for like to be the most simple thing to understand. So I've got a kill box as the desired space where a team decides to initiate the hard dive. So you're looking at the desired space where a team decides to initiate the hard dive. So I'm trying to say, I think I have it here, the area where you want to spend your dive resources. So your kill box is basically, where is my enemy standing? I need to dive there. That is my kill box, okay? My enemy target is here, so remember we identify the target. The enemy Baptiste, so we're just diving Baptiste again. The enemy Baptiste, he's there. He's top right, whatever it is. That is where your kill box is. Your kill box is where you are diving, where you are expending those dive resources, where you are initiating the hard dive onto. And I've got what makes a good kill box here. So I'm going to make a whole video about kill boxes because it's a lot more complicated than this, but what makes a good kill box? Everything we just talked about makes a good kill box. Backline LOS, very important, because that's how you can sustain your kill box. Because a kill box, like it says here, the desired space, that's where you want to be trying to kill a target. You don't want to be going outside of that kill box, right? So you need to make sure your backline has really good LOS at that kill box, because you want to be sustaining a hard dive in that kill box. And then your dive core setup, so that's just everyone in their positions to dive, that's everyone staged, ready to dive. Literally everything we just talked about makes a good kill box, because like I said, all of these things, they all lead to a kill box. That's what the concept of kill boxes is. That's what makes a good kill box, everything we just talked about. So we're gonna very, very, very briefly touch on setting up kill boxes, and I think this is the last thing I have down on my little teacher plan for today. Setting up kill boxes. So it's different when you're attacking and when you're defending. I'm going to try break this down like as simple and as basically as I can. We're not going to go into detail like I said earlier, but just going to break down the simple. When attacking an objective or retaking an objective, so say you've lost a fight and you have to go back in, the enemy's defending, you have to go back in, you have to attack them, they're defending a point, whatever. So when attacking an objective / retaking an objective, you need to turn the enemy's position into a kill box, because the enemy is now defending, right? So you need to make the enemy's defensive positions, you need to turn that into your own kill box, right? So that's, that we're looking at staging the dive. That's a lot more like, it takes time to stage that, okay? Whereas if you're looking at defending, so say you've won the fight, you're defending the objective now, you could just set up a kill box area. You can pick an area, you'd be like, okay, we are gonna dive the Baptiste on this corner. That's our kill box. That's where we're trying to set up the kill box, and then your whole team gets ready for that kill box to, for that area to be a kill box. And again, go back to what makes a good kill box, because when you're defending, you can set this all up before the fight even starts, right? So when you're defending, you're looking at a specific area where you want to dive, where you want your kill box to be. And then what makes that good kill box? Backline LOS. The most important thing I can tell you of how to set up a really good kill box when you're defending is make sure your backline has really good LOS of the whole area. Because when you're defending, right, You can't just sit there and expect your desired target to just go strolling in to the exact spot you want them to be, right? That's unrealistic. That's why when you're defending, the kill box area is a lot bigger than it is when you're attacking. Because it's you know even in a perfect world, that like the chances of, say, the enemy Baptiste, if that's who you want to dive, the chances of your enemy Baptiste just waltzing into the exact spot you want them to be, that's ridiculous. That you can't expect that to happen, right? So you need to make sure your kill box is a big area, because that it's got to cover a huge space, because otherwise, if you choose a really small kill box, if your desired target doesn't walk into that kill box, and we've set up a really tiny one, then we're screwed, right? Big kill box when defending, and then attacking. That's just, you see your enemy position, say they're top right, then you just position and you stage around that to be able to dive top right. But like I said, setting up kill boxes, this is a video for another time. That's a whole video in itself, setting up kill boxes. So, that is pretty much the basics of a hard dive. That is probably the most basic sort of like breakdown of what a hard dive is. So I'm sort of just gonna leave it on this definition here. We're gonna zoom in. That's what I want people to go away. That's what I want people to go away from today, sort of watching this video and sort of realizing that a hard dive is a maximal resource engagement onto a target. That's what dives need to be. At a very basic level, at a very basic understanding, that is what a hard dive is. That is what your dives need to be as a team. Maximal resource engagements onto targets. But then how do you set up your maximal resource engagements? Well, you look at your resources, see what resources you have for your dive, and then you stage your dive. And then by staging your dive, you organize that by following a simple comm structure of identifying a target, staging around that target. Is my team ready? 3, 2, 1, let's dive. And all of this is what a kill box is, essentially. All of everything I've talked about today is pretty much just discussing how to set up an effective kill box. But like I said, I'm trying so hard not to like break a kill box down into loads of detail, because I've like touched on it, but I don't want to break it down in this video today. So if you've got to the end of the video, or if you're still watching on the stream, because this was recorded live on Twitch, follow my Twitch. The main thing to go away today is I need to stage dives. I need to stage my maximal resource engagements. I need to be staging my dives. Very, very, very important. But yeah, I think that's everything for today. That was a very, very simple and very basic outlook of what a hard dive is. And yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it wasn't too boring, me just explaining sort of like dummy concepts and very like basic stuff. But yeah, I hope that was enjoyable. And for people watching on stream right now, I hope you're enjoying me doing a YouTube outro. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. So thank you very much.